Welcome, everybody, back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
So this is the show where we dive into all things natural AF. We're getting rid of synthetic ideas, synthetic foods, synthetic everything. So as we're going along this journey, swapping out all the garbage for what's real, what's authentic, what's true. And we get into all kinds of ideas from law, health, spirituality, psychology, all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. And although we typically wouldn't have politicians on the show, we've made an exception for Michael O'Neill because for those of you that don't know, he is the husband of Barbara O'Neill, who we've also had on this show. And he's just bringing a different perspective to Australian politics. And I think we really need that. You know, I think we discussed this briefly at the end. You know, people want to try and take down the system and, you know, we got to fight the system. And unfortunately, you can't just remove something that's been in place for, you know, centuries. So, you know, this is the way that it has to happen. And, you know, Michael's doing such a great job with his party and actually giving the pushback that the system needs to start just crumbling on its own, which is what is happening. Yeah. So we're in full support of his party and what he's doing. And yeah, we had a great chat with him.
Yeah, he's like a more jovial Clint Eastwood. He's literally like, get off my lawn.
Oh, guys, honestly, I was actually thinking that. I was like, how is Michael O'Neill natural AF? Like, just his attitude to authority, I freaking love it. Like, everyone needs to take a leaf out of his book. Like, if that's the first step you take to being natural AF is just saying no to authority and just with such conviction, like.
He's a real G. I'd share a cell block with Michael. if the control arm establishment ever kicked in our doors and hauled us out of here for thought crimes.
Yeah, Michael just doesn't take no crap from no one. And I like that. And he does it in a very respectful way. He does it in honor and he stands his ground.
Yeah. He's just like, I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
Gator don't play that.
Yeah, and he's a character. Actually, I just want to share a quick story because I didn't share it in the interview. We kind of spoke about it off air. When my mum was going to all the rallies in Sydney in 2020 and 2021, Michael was at a lot of them. And there was one in particular that there were lots of police. There was a really big police presence and they were arresting people. And mum just remembers they were trying to arrest him or something. I don't even know exactly the story, but he was like literally just like running away from the cops in a really cartoon character like way. And it just reminded her of the Benny Hill show. It's a super old reference. But if anyone's seen the old Benny Hill, it's like and it's got like this.
He's like grabbing his hat.
Yeah, and it's like really comical. And that was, mum was like, it was literally like watching a Benny Hill show the way he was running away from the police. And so, you know, I just love that because, you know, not all of this stuff to do with like quote unquote fighting authority. It doesn't have to be so serious and let's fight everything and be angry. And like, you can do it with a bit of comedy and, you know, have a bit of fun with it.
Like I said, he'd be the guy that I'd want to share a cell block with if they ever tried to FEMA camp us.
And of course, being married to Barbara O'Neill, health and natural health is huge for the whole O'Neill family. It's what Barbara's made her living off of. And so Michael really stands true to that as well. And that's what we're all about here at Natural AF.
Yeah, and natural art form. I tell people every weekend at the markets, Barbara O'Neill was one of my early inspirations for making home remedies, just simple things. We've tried some of the flu bombs. We've tried different things like putting garlic and onion on your feet when you have a chest cold. Simple things like that, especially during COVID. They didn't want to promote because they wanted everyone taking the pharmaceutical route. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you have to go and fight. You don't have to like, what was that guy in the States that actually shot a freaking CEO of a pharmaceutical company or something like that? You don't have to go that route. You just have to take responsibility for yourself, for your family, for your children, vote with your dollars, choose things that are made with integrity, made with honesty, and that have a track record of working. That's why I made my first product Alleviate, because I needed something for topical pain relief that actually worked and didn't have all the garbage chemicals in it, and it really worked. And we're getting a lot of really good feedback from people.
And we've extended the product range out to natural deodorant and a skin repair lotion here in Australia. And the exciting news coming is, which we've been talking about for a while, it's no secret, but the deodorant is coming to the US. Now, if you're not on the mailing list, definitely get on it now at naturalartform.com. You also, when you join, you'll get 10% off just for joining the mailing list. And that's going to to be released to our email subscribers first before we go to the general public. So if you want to get in first for the deodorant in the US, we're going to have 2 different scents on offer. Definitely head to the website and join the mailing list. And of course, as a Natural AF listener, you'll always get 10% off site-wide off your entire order, no matter how many times you order, using the code NaturalAF10. And you can get that at the website as well.
Definitely sign up for that, because that's where we'll send out first notice that the deodorant is available. And I won't say when on the show, because I might come up against some snags, but it's coming up in a week or 2. So if you want to get in on that, we will send out a nice little launch sale. So don't miss out.
And of course, we have the Living Free Festival coming up, which we will be attending. Isaac's going to be emceeing. I'm going to be doing a workshop. We're going to have the natural art form stall there. It's going to be lots of fun all around. And of course, if you want to join us, we not only highly encourage it, but you'll also get a pretty sweet discount on tickets if you use our code NaturalAF. Head to livingfreefestival.org and you can check out all the details and get tickets there.
Yeah. And if you're in the States, don't forget to check out the Bertaria Times National Festival. If you really like all of our episodes and what we're all about, and you're not super offended by any of my jokes that I slip in every now and then, you probably fit in really well with the Bears and the Bertaria Times Festival. And I haven't heard anyone that goes there with good intentions that had a bad time. There's a few people that snuck in there and tried to make like gotcha videos about it. It's because Owen is like, he's the most banned, probably the most banned individual. He hasn't been banned from Australia, but I'm sure if he came here, they'd probably kick him out.
They probably just wouldn't let him in the country, to be honest.
Anyways, he's been kicked out of another venue in Florida, so they adjusted and went to somewhere else. But that's why they made the festival grounds there, because one, Owen kept getting banned from all these places and had to do, pop-up comedy shows at, like, you call it the comedy speakeasy at Barnes, and I think he did a children's library or something in Denver, and like, so funny. But anyways, they've got their own space in Missouri. It's amazing. It's wholesome. It's family friendly. And I think it is kind of a really good model of what others can create in their own communities. That's, censorship free from the whatever establishment. So if you want to get involved with something like that, go to bertariacampgrounds.com and you'll see all the information, dates, and what you can expect.
Awesome. Well, without any further ado, let's get into the episode. Michael O'Neill, husband of world-renowned health educator Barbara O'Neill, is the founder of the Heart political party in Australia, formerly known as the Informed Medical Options Party, or IMOP. Michael has been involved in the natural health industry for close to 40 years and has witnessed firsthand both the effectiveness of disease prevention using lifestyle change and harmless natural remedies, as well as innumerable cases of people who have been seriously damaged by conventional medical treatments, including when his first child was vaccinated. Michael is passionate about the rights of all Australians to have control over their own bodies, freedom of speech, ending the gender indoctrination of our children, and solidly enshrining parents' rights in law.
All right. Michael O'Neill, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Natural AF.
It's a pleasure to be here, Isaac and Alexa. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. We're so excited to have you on. After we interviewed Barbara, we're like, we've got to get Michael on, because obviously you guys and what Barbara's experience has a lot to do with you. And we've heard you on other interviews talking about how you believe that a lot of the targeted attack on her was because of your political career. So yeah, we love to get into that. So maybe let's start there and sort of, how did you get started in the more of the political side of things?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was really the motivating factor for me was no jab, no pay. When that was introduced in 2015, I went to all the political parties at the time, and I thought, I'm going to help oppose this, but no one was interested. And I felt, can't they see it? This is a violation of our conscience. This is the violation of, some basic rights of the Australian people and, particularly our families. And so I felt that there was a desert, so to speak, in the whole landscape of offering freedom and a different narrative family. So I decided to start a political party.
Awesome.
And was that the beginning of the Heart Party, or was there a different one, like a progenitor to that?
We've actually, it was the Informed Medical Options Party. We were primarily focused on medical freedom, and we morphed into the Heart Party. We saw that we wanted to be a little bit more broad spectrum. So the Heart stands for health, environment, accountability, rights, and transparency. And we thought that really encapsulated us better because we had a broader platform than just the medical freedom, even though that is very huge in our mind, because if you lose freedom over your body, that's the last bastion of freedom a human has to decide what we're going to eat or put into our body. And of course, my view was that anything that's inserted into your body against your will is rape. I mean, if you want to do it, that's fine. It's consensual. But once it's done against your will, it's rape. And however that force is, whether it's financial coercion or position coercion, job coercion. I mean, we send people to jail, bosses who coerce maybe females to do certain things or lose their job. And the government did it. They said, if you don't insert this into your body, you're going to lose your job. We were raped.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man, that started back in 2015. So before all the COVID stuff, what jabs were they talking about requiring you to have in order to work?
Sure. It was a whole lot of childhood, starting right at birth, even from the vitamin K. I personally chose my children not to have the vitamin K. I felt like, really? I didn't know much back then. I thought, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think that the body's designed to heal itself and it will do so. It doesn't really need this, a medical intervention straight into their veins. No. And of course, back then when we were making those choices, we weren't an enemy of state or we weren't being punished for it. We was just like, oh, yeah, okay, that's your call. They frowned upon it a bit, but it was that was about the extent of it. But we saw that morph into this, now you're a threat to all the other children in society. Oh, you're a threat to the well-being of Australia. Like we're going to all collapse and descend into some sort of ill health if you just don't do this.
Right. Disregarding all the hundreds and thousands of years that humans have been around without that, and we're still here. So
Absolutely. I mean, the greatest contributors to poor health in children has been poor nutrition, poor hygiene. These are the things. And of course, we've actually come a long way. And they'll often cite examples, the infant mortality rate in such and such a country that might not have vaccines, or back in the 1800s. But these were times that people were extremely poor. They had very, very often, if they lived in the cities, the sanitation and hygiene were appalling. We would report a dog if it was in such conditions to the dog owner, to the RSPCA. That's how children were living back then. Of course, we've come so far from that, and of course, the medication might like to take the badge for being the savior of the children, but it's not worthy to be worn by them because it's really there's so many other factors.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a little different in Australia because in the States, you guys have requirements for children to be vaccinated to attend school. Is that right?
I mean,
or does it depend on the state?
Yeah, all state dependent. Inside the state, it's school dependent. So it just kind of depends. I think in university, when I went, it was required to get, up on your hepatitis B vaccines or, anything that's, like STD related or whatever. But
because here in Australia, that's kind of like that's their, what's that? I don't want to butcher this. The operus mandi.
Oh, now I can't. Now
I
that
can't
you
think of it.
apparatus mandi, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
modus operandi. Yes.
that's modus operandi.
Yes, the more educated man took it. Yeah,
that's what it is. It's like they will threaten your. So that's what they did with that's the no jab, no pay, because we have a lot of listeners over in the States. So the no jab, no pay and no jab, no play policies were, you're going to miss out on your family tax benefits and whatever through Centrelink,
That's
which is our
correct.
welfare system.
See, years ago, if you were married and you could claim your wife as a tax deduction, you could also claim your children, each of them, and they amounted to tax deductions. So back in the 80s, it was decided that, oh no, we won't do that anymore. We will put the money back into your hands. So you lost your tax deduction, but you actually got it as a payment. So it was sort of like, oh well, government, big brother's now giving you something. And at the time, I just had tiny little children. My children were born in 1984, 86. So that all happened around that time. And I refused to take it. I thought, no, I'm not going to take that payment, because what they give, they will use to control. And and people think, you're nuts, like, just take it. And I think, no, I'm not going to take it. And even my wife at the time, she was opposed. She said, oh, and you should take it, And I said, I just don't trust them. Anyway, it took a long time for what I feared to come true, but eventually they used that very thing to coerce and punish Australian families that didn't stick to the current narrative. And last night, I watched a movie called Bornhofen, and I don't often, and it came up, and I thought, I'm going to watch that. And it's about a Christian pastor who stood during Nazi Germany. And I was watching that, and I thought the principles that he stood for are the same principles we stand for. And I resonated with the bravery of the man, and I resonated with the reasons he did it. And he was offered freedom many times, but he didn't take it. He said no. He identified with his own German people and was eventually hanged 2 weeks before the war ended for his stand. So these are not small issues. These are huge issues, and the implications are very broad. And I always say that if we allow the small things, we're only setting them up for the big things. We have to oppose any breach of our basic constitutional and human rights, because we are a free country, and we get onto a very, very slippery slope when we sort of think, oh, well, that's not me. That's not me. I'm going to do it. Like, no, you should be, a diligent citizen should be prepared to defend the rights of someone you even disagree with, because it's right for them to have the freedom to make that choice under our Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So since you're in politics, you'd be the right guy to ask about this. What's the status on so we have the U.S. Constitution, and what was the British document before there was Australia? It's the Magna Carta, right?
Carta.
Yes.
So legally, is that still something that holds weight in the Australian parliamentary system, or do they kind of view it as a historical relic?
Well, look, honestly, we've seen in the last 20 years, even 15 years, to safely say, they have very little regard for the true tenets of law and our constitutional rights. Magna Carta is a wonderful document, and it's the bedrock of democracy. In the UK, we derive our constitution from the UK, the English Crown, and when our constitution was drafted at the very beginning at the 20th century, these were men who had a good understanding of the nature of all the fallen societies and what they'd come from in Europe, and they'd fled other countries, and they grafted a constitution that was very big on personal freedom and the rights of the rights of man. Even though we don't have a Bill of Rights, they were very concerned that things we put in there. And people understood that. After the Second World War, if I can give the story, there's the Australian government, like in 1946, this is how only the war had just ended, and they decided that they'd like to give Australians medical subsidised by the federal government, but they were seen as unconstitutional. So they went to a referendum to actually draft that into constitution. And people were so concerned about government overreach then, they made the government insert in the clause there be no civil conscription, and it even names pharmaceutical. That's section 51 of the Constitution, 23A. So here we have in our Constitution that says that the government is not allowed to use any civil conscription, in other words, force, because they just come out of the Second World War. They'd seen the worst of forced medication in the Nazi regime, and they thought, we never want to enter down this track.
Yeah.
Fast forward 60 years, and they did the exact same thing and just disregarded their constitution. So we're in a very, very slippery slope. And of course, myself as a Christian and as a religious person, I'm also very aware of Section 116 of the Constitution that guarantees the right for me to make choices based on my religious views. And one of the religious views that I have is that I'm actually a great believer in natural, and I believe that's my religious view. I believe in good health. And so Scott Morrison, a man, goes to church, claims to be a Christian. He said no religious exemptions. So we're in this really surreal situation in Australia where even our so-called Christian leaders don't even understand some of the basic fundamental tenets of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can kind of see in real time here why it was so just the prescience of them making the Bill of Rights in America the way they did.
Yes.
It's one of the smart parts about it too, is it's simple enough. Children can understand it because there's not very many. They're kind of like bullet points. These freedoms shall not be infringed. And I remember as a kid in elementary school, they actually would hand out little printed pamphlets. Every child got one with the whole entire Constitution in it and the Bill of Rights right at the front. And you would kind of go over it in school. And I think they would try to get us to read more of it. It was optional, but it was just having that little booklet with that in it. And we treated it as valuable. And I grew up in a rural-ish surrounding in Wyoming. And that was, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was taught at an early age. And it was held as like respected, it was revered. It was something that we was taught was valuable and unique in the world.
Well, and that's really interesting because in Australia, like I don't think they teach that. Like, I don't remember, I went through the schooling system. We don't learn a lot about our history and certainly not our constitutional rights and things like that. And I think that's very much done on purpose. And I think it's just getting worse and worse with what they're teaching in the curriculums now. It's just pulling people further and further away from knowing our basic human rights. I mean, I just see schools now, they're just indoctrination camps. That's really all they are.
Well, I 100% agree with you. The school systems, I homeschooled all my children. I had 2 children. Oh, wow. I married Barbara, and Barbara had 6 children. So we ended up with a Brady bunch of 8 children.
Oh, wow.
And we were passionate homeschoolers because I looked at the school system. I'd been through it myself. And even now, back then it was in the 80s and the 90s, it was a far cry from what I'd come from. And I thought, no, these are my responsibility. I'm not going to usurp. I'm not giving my responsibility over to someone else that I actually sort of vehemently disagree with their philosophy of life. Because at the end of the day, they're my children. I have a limited time in my life in which to raise them. I'm going to take that seriously. And
good on you.
You know, everyone can make their own choice, but I'm very happy to see the figures are that since COVID, homeschooling is actually booming.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen negative articles about it, and the government's worried about this, huge rise in homeschooling. Like, go away. Like, what does homeschooling cost? I was a zero burden on the education system, so what's the matter with these people? They should be encouraging it, with, blowout budgets on education and health. And everything that would actually save the government money in education and health, they oppose.
Yeah.
These people are mad or devious. And whichever way it is, they're not fit to be politicians when they have that sort of mentality.
Yeah. I think part of it too maybe this is a more unconscious version, is they're worried about being embarrassed, because when I was homeschooled for 2 years, around 7th and 8th grade, went into high school in Texas. And after my homeschooling year for 2 years, I went in at 9th grade and was testing at 11th and 12th grade in all subjects. So I was like, 2 years, I could pretty much graduate high school in 1 year. And in fact, I did graduate a year early from high school, but this education system is so poor in the States. It's a little bit better here, I think, but in the States, you literally could probably condense everything into a couple of years and be done with it.
I think it's the same here, though. I think it's intentionally, and that's a perfect example to show that the schooling, the quote unquote education system is there to actually keep people dumbed down and to not be teaching the things they actually need to learn to be fully self-responsible and thrive, because that's not a population that's easily controlled.
That's correct. They do not want free thinkers. I only educated for 2 hours a day. I thought 2 hours a day is enough. They're little brains. They don't need any more than that. And the rest of the time there was work and duties to do. So I'm teaching them about the real facts of life, is because once they leave school, they're going to have to go out and get jobs and work. So I wanted to make sure they were good workers and would find employment. Remember, my little daughter said to me one day, she must have been about 10, she came to me and she said, "Daddy, we've got to go to school, because if we don't go to school, we'll never get a job." I said, "Oh, really? Who have you been talking to?" "Grandma, I can see that." She said, "Yes," Grandma said. I said, "Well, let me tell you something. Grandma, we love Grandma so much, but Daddy's going to be the one that will make the choice about your schooling, and you're not going to schooling. So put that idea out of your head." She said, and I told her this thing. I said, "School will teach you to be stupid. I'll teach you to be successful." Okay. And all our 8 children, they're all successful.
It's
and
amazing.
I also, the other thing that I felt that school 14 was the max. I thought 13, 14, that's it, you're done. A lot of the boys, I said, "No, you boys, you're ready to work now." They could read and write. They could add up. They understood business. They understood life. They would now had to go out and work with real people and find out what life's about. And I read the biography of John Harvey Kellogg, who was at the time one of the richest men of the world, invented the cornflakes and all the rest of it. And in his book, he said his father said to him when he was 12 years old, he said, "Son, it's about time you made your own way in life." And it was time for him to go to work. And he had almost no schooling, but he ended up, highly successful. School does not teach you to be successful. It teaches you, well, I don't know. My schooling was for me, it was an unending display of boredom. I just was unstimulated by everything that I was learning, and I craved to get out. And I did leave at 14. My father told me, he said, "You can leave when you have an apprenticeship." So I was like a boy possessed. And eventually I found an apprenticeship as an electrician, and they started me at 14. So I felt that was a good time to start. And at 18, you're finished your apprenticeship. Not finishing school, you actually finish your apprenticeship. You're now a tradesman, and you can find your place in life as an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And did you grow up in a city, or were you rural? Like, were you a country boy?
No, really city, in the Maitland. So it's not a huge city. I don't know if you're familiar with Maitland, just out of Newcastle.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
but
that's
Isaac's, it's a couple of hours north of Sydney.
When I was growing up, it was about 40,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah. And
yeah, so that's roughly like my hometown size.
Yeah, small. And it's funny actually, because the last company I worked for, they opened up a clinic in Maitland, and I got to know one of the managers that worked there. And although it's definitely more populated, you wouldn't say it's country, but yeah, she rode horses, and yeah, it's definitely a bit more of a laid back lifestyle. But I did actually want to ask you, Michael, because it sounds like you've kind of found your way through all of these things in terms of health and raising your kids. And it sounds like very intuitively, but did you have any life experiences like as a boy growing up that sort of where you experienced things differently, and that's where you thought you wanted to do things differently? Or what kind of influence do you feel?
Well, it's interesting. I'm actually writing my autobiography at the moment. So I'm sort of, my head's reeling with a lot of old stories, but I now, looking back, realise that I was a little are different. I remember I left home at the age of 12 for a while. I went and worked in a city of Armidale and living in a horse stable and a race at the Armidale race course. That was not my parents' intention. I went away for a couple of days and didn't come home. And I used to like to do things differently. I travelled by myself at 13 from Sydney to Perth on the brand new Indian Pacific train line, and
oh my gosh,
had these sort of adventures. I used to find that stimulating. I've always been a little bit of a talkative and friendly guy. I love meeting people. I found the school system. I ended up in a lot of trouble in the school system. I ultimately was actually expelled. They said that I was incorrigible. I just wasted time. Anyway, I got an apprenticeship as well. So there's a whole lot of things. So I understand the level. I was just bored, but there was a big wide world I wanted to find out about, and I was always very interested in what is the truth about things. I was fascinated to know. As a young person, I expressed an interest to become a Catholic priest because I went to Catholic schools. So I went off to a pre-seminary, and I had a lot of questions to ask. I was very serious about the whole thing. I found that the answers weren't forthcoming, and I thought, okay, well, this is not true. So I've always been on a quest to find out what is actually true. And I think you've got to be honest. If you say you're a truth seeker, you've got to be honest to accept the truth in whatever guise it comes in. And that cannot always be easy. A lot of people say they're truth seekers, but they pitch their standard at certain points and says, well, I'm not going to advance beyond this level of truth.
Yeah.
But, that's sort of very briefly some of my childhood.
So what was it like traveling to Perth on the train? Were you like indoors in a car, or did you stow away in the box cars? Or
No, I didn't do it. I didn't do it that way. I had an aunt visit me from Perth, and she told us about Perth. And as far as I was concerned, listening to these stories of Perth and Western Australia, it was like the promised land. And I felt like, oh, I've got to go there. So I said to my father when I was 12, I said, I want to go to Perth. He said, yeah, you can go there when you can pay your own way. And I said, do you promise me that? And he said, yes, I promise. So what I did, I got a job I was a paper boy. I delivered papers 6 days a week. I worked on the 7th on the Saturday, every day except Saturday. Saturday I worked 10 hours on a poultry farm, just working very, very hard, and I made money. So it took me over about a year. I was able to save up and buy a ticket, and at the time I was half price, and I still remember the price. It was $88 for a first-class ticket return to Perth.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I was making $1.20 a week, working 6 days delivering papers. So that just to put the $88 into some perspective,
Yeah.
And then working on the poultry. So I had a goal. I stuck to it. And when I finally told my father at the age of late 13, he said, oh, no, that's impossible. You can't go. I said, but you made me promise, Dad. You promised. And he was also a man that valued your word and truth. And he said, I did. And he said, oh, but Mike, I never thought, let's just wait a few years.
Yeah.
You're only very young. I said, Dad, you told me. And so I went on a 6-week journey. I had a wonderful time. I just wandered the streets. I went to Rottnest Island. I just it was a great adventure. Of course, I had to come back to school. It was like, no, back to prison. I was let out of jail.
Yeah.
They were just, everything was it was just boring and irrelevant to me. It never, nothing tigged in my interest level there,
Yeah.
So,
well, that's incredible because that just shows you when you put something for some people have that ability. I think everybody does, but some people don't have contact with it where they just pick a direction, focus their energy into it and just follow it through until completion. And I've done that a few times in my life where I didn't really know what the end destination was, but I was dead set. I'm going to do this. And
Yes.
it was more of an exploratory, like adventure thing. It wasn't really for like any other motivation except like there's something on the other side of this. If I get through that, then I'll satisfy that curiosity. And yeah, it's led me on so many adventures.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, I'm writing a book at the moment, and the title is called "Life Wasn't Meant to Be Boring." It's life is an adventure for Barbara, for myself. We've both been very conscious of what is the truth, what's right, let's have a different life. Let's
Yeah.
have a life that's fulfilling. Let's have a life that's good for our children. Let's have a life that's good for all our fellow travelers in this life, for the other people in humanity. Because selfishness is the most inhibiting characteristic that you could actually have, and I'm not interested in it. And also, working your entire life to die rich is one of the most worthless aims in life, I feel. And so
Yeah.
I've understood that. And my father, who was a well-off man, he used to say to me, he was terribly worried about my direction in life. He said, you don't seem to be taking focus on the things that matter, like your financial future and money. You're all consumed with health and all this. At the time I was going off, I was living on Aboriginal missions and helping people. She's with all the, the Aboriginals and all this sort of thing. He said, you'll end up get to my age and you'll be poor and you'll be very sorry. But I never saw it that way. In fact, I had a little. When he told me this, I said to him, "Dad, let me ask you this simple question. You're quite well off, aren't you?" And he said, "Yes, I'm very well off." I said, "Yes, you've got houses and shops." "Yes, yes." He said, "Nice, you've got land, got a big share portfolio." "Yes, yes, yes." And I said, "Well, Dad, when I get to your age and nothing else happens, I'll get that. So, like, everything's good." He
Yeah.
said, "That is disgusting." I said, "Honestly, Dad, I'm just making a point. Honestly, I feel that just the pursuit of money is not my goal in life, and it's a worthless aim."
Yeah.
Especially when that's the focus, because obviously we all have to earn a living. Like, we live in a world now where it's necessary, because the other end of the spectrum is, and we know people like this, that I hate money, and I'm like, that's probably not a good thing to put out there, because
No.
you're probably going to struggle a bit. But I think that when you're doing something that has so much purpose, and you guys are a perfect example of this, like the work that Barbara does, she lives and breathes it. She loves it. And that oozes from her. And to then be monetarily rewarded in that regard, it's just an exchange of energy. Like, the value that she provides is the value that she gets back. So I think it's just when money is the primary focus. And again, I think this is one of the things that is very much programmed into us and in society. Like, we're taught to value, like, the more money you earn, the more value you are as a person. And that's just not necessarily true.
Yes, and that's true. And during this journey Barbara and I are on, we've been married actually for 28 years, coming up for 29.
Wow.
And particularly in these last years, we get to meet a lot of people. We've met Hollywood stars, we've met famous sportsmen, we've met royalty, we've been in their homes, we've been in their palaces. And we always say they're really nice people, but they're just people. There's nothing there. We don't think, oh wow, they're a better person, or an honor.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We're in the palace of I won't say who, but a royal family, and we'd been there since 6 p.m. And at 9 p.m. I said, I could see Barbara was getting a bit tired. I said, "We're going to actually leave now. We really appreciate your time." They said, "Oh no, we want you to come and have dinner with the whole family, because there's more of the royal family." And I said, "Oh, well, what time do you have dinner?" And they said, 10:30.
Oh, wow.
I said, "Oh, no. Definitely not. No, we're going to go. We're not eating that late at night." So, and Barbara I could see she was like, I know my little wife. She works hard all day. I tell her she's like a little ant. She gets up in the morning and then at the end of the day she drops off and she wakes up early again and she does it all again. And she's funny. She'll say to me, "Oh, your little ant's been busy today." Anyway, so we left and they called the limousine and took us home and then all our friends, when I mentioned a couple, they said, "You what? You walked away from dinner with the royal family. Like, are you mad?" I said, "No, it's our bedtime." So
I love that.
That would be what I would say to anyone. If you invited me to your house and said we're going to have dinner at 10:30, we'd say, "Look, we're going to pass." Honestly,
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's Joe Blow down the street or whoever it is. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Is that a cultural thing with royal families, or in that part of the world in general? Do they eat that late? I do
believe so, because I did I was questioning, and they said, they seem to get up late too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's because, are you in Dubai right now, Michael?
I'm in Dubai, yes.
Yeah, so because my mum's side is of Middle Eastern descent, and the Middle Eastern countries, they get up late, they stay up late. It's very common for them to not only eat dinner late, but they'll sit up and drink coffee at like midnight. It's normal.
Yeah, it's that kind of people.
Definitely, definitely a cultural thing.
You go out there early in the morning, there's not much happening. There's people shuffling to work, but tonight, the streets are alive. There's food everywhere. People are eating, and you see the shops open. Their hours are from 11 a.m. till 2 a.m. That's their hours.
Oh, wow.
Because here in Dubai at the moment, outside workers, because it's in the middle of, it's very hot. It's like, I think it was about 44 yesterday.
Oh, wow.
They shut from 12 to 3. They don't work outside. It just stops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad, because the poor Indian, Pakistanis and Africans who do most of the outside labour, I just look at them and I think, oh, you poor guys, work in this dreadful heat, I enjoy walking around, but I'm just walking around, and I do like to get out of the air conditioning and just breathe the natural fresh air, but I don't like to be slaving. And they wear clothes they're covered, I think.
Yeah.
It must be so hot in there.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was crazy about it. Because so I was in the military in the States, and we did a bit of, I never deployed to the Middle Eastern countries, but all of our training was in the context of like learning their culture and learning how to, just adapt it and how to build relationships with them and all that. And they talked about in the desert, you're wearing your body armor and your helmet and all this stuff. And it's like, they'll give you, in the heat, they'll give you hot green tea or some other kind of tea, but it's hot tea and you drink it in the middle of the day. And to me, I just thought that was so weird. I was like, I'm going to pass out if I'm wearing all that body armor. I'm going to take a hot green tea. And they were like, no, it actually cools you down somehow. And it actually kind of does. We do it, in the summers here. Your mom drinks hot tea and all that. She's not a Bedouin or anything, but she's adapted for warm climates, I think.
Yeah.
Well, everywhere we go, they bring out they want to give us tea, but no, the barber, I drink tea, so we're always like, oh, just some water, please. Just water, okay.
Yeah.
So
we do well on our water.
Yeah,
good.
So I want to talk a little about, Michael, how you guys sort of ended up, because I know you've kind of got almost like a home base now in Dubai, and we've actually got the book that you wrote, The Assassination of Barbara O'Neill, and I love it. I recommend people get it just because it's such a quick, easy read. And so, your perspective is that they really attacked Barbara based on your sort of political involvement. Do you want to kind of tell a bit of that story? Because up until that point, was Barbara just doing what she was doing with no issues?
Yes. Yeah, Barbara was just doing what she was doing, and I was getting around taking meetings here and there, and Barbara had a small sphere of influence. She was mostly going from churches, and she was getting, if we got 300 people, that was really big. Now it's in the thousands, of course. But I got Barbara to take a meeting that was up in Mullumbimby. Mm-hmm. Anyway, at the time, a lady contacted me, and she was monitoring the sites of the Friends of Science in Medicine and the Australian Skeptics. And she contacted me and said, listen, I monitor their sites all the time, and they have just done a call out because of what you're doing and what they believe Barbara is complicit. They're going to lodge complaints against you with the HCCC. She said, they've called out to their members to come forward and to lodge complaints. And I mean, like, really? She said,
Wow.
yes. So she said, be careful, Michael. They're very vindictive and nasty people. And I said, oh, okay, wow. Literally within probably 4 weeks, we got the first complaint. It's been brought to our attention that Barbara is recommending goat's milk for children that can't be breastfed. We laughed at it. Goat's milk, like 2/3 of the world, cultures use goat's milk for infants and for drinking.
Yeah.
No, they were deadly. So we made a bit of a reply thinking this is stupid. A big organisation like the Healthcare Complaints Commission, big government organisation that's worried about practitioner malpractice, they're not going to be worried about a lady that says to people, oh, if you can't breastfeed, maybe you could try some goat's milk. Oh, no. We didn't realise it at the beginning, but it had nothing to do with the goat's milk or that she's doing something wrong. It's about destroying her. And we in total got 3 complaints. They were absurd. She talks against vaccines. She claims to have a cure for cancer, which was a nonsense. They had nothing on her, but that was how it all happened. So, yes, it was because of my political career. And yes, none of the people ever met Barbara, were ever treated by Barbara, or actually had a legitimate complaint personally from what Barbara had advised them to do. So it fits completely into a vexatious complaint that's actually bogus. But they bought it and they made a ruling on it.
And the time frame on this is around 2019, is that right?
That's correct. That was 2019, just prior to COVID. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. It's almost like they knew that it was going to happen.
At that point. And
yeah.
But so Barbara was out. I said to Barbara, well, listen, darling, I see you've got 3 options you can do with your life now. Number 1 is you can retire, just take it off. Number 2 is we can go to court and challenge it. And number 3 is that you can just work overseas. And I'd no sooner finished the last, she said, number 3. I said, really? She said, yes. I don't want to retire. I believe that God has given me too much information and I can be of help to people. And I never want to go back into court, because she'd been in one of their kangaroo courts. And she said, no, I'm happy to just go overseas and work over there. I said, okay, then I'll make that happen. And that's what I started to do. Then I started to organise a speaking schedule for her overseas.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And you see what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bless her heart. We spoke about that when we had her on, and just saying that it was the best thing that could have happened for her, because she literally just blew up after that. And we've literally not met anyone that doesn't know who she is now. And so I guess I wanted to ask, like, how did you guys end up now sort of having this home base in Dubai? Because obviously so that was back here sort of 2019, and we're in 2025 now. So, did she sort of travel all over the world and you went to different places and then you've just kind of found that you settled in Dubai? Or is there a lot more demand for her there?
There is a high demand for her in Dubai, the Middle East. She goes to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar,
Wow.
India. She's very popular with the different royal families in these areas, particularly female members of the families.
Yeah.
And so also Barbara had been excluded. She now was not making any money in Australia. All her income was outside of Australia, yet when we were bringing it back, it became taxable income. So we thought Barbara's over 70 years old. I spoke to a taxation lawyer. He said she lives outside of Australia more than 6 months. I said, yeah, definitely. It's more like 9 months outside of Australia. plus.
Yeah.
And so what we did, she is not a resident for tax purposes in Australia, and she's now has her base in Dubai for her.
Yeah.
Not
That's very
not
adaptive
for me.
thinking.
I still
Yeah.
run my business in Australia, and we pay all our very high taxes in Australia and so forth.
Yeah.
For me, but for Barbara, who's been booted out of Australia and doesn't earn anything in Australia, yes. So we set Dubai as a base, and they have very, very, very good tax situations, and we just have some extremely good friends here that we've
Good.
come
Nice.
to make. Yeah, very, very
Yeah.
nice. And
Beautiful.
so
Yeah. The
it's a
Arabs
place of
in these
peace. Our
countries are very
children love
warm.
coming over to visit. I've just had my granddaughter here. I've just sent her off. She's gone to Kenya for 3 months to work in an orphanage that Barbara and I support, and I'm a director of. So
Oh, nice.
we have our fingers in quite a few pies, and so
Yeah.
it's a nice little place. But I still spend most of my time around Australia.
Yeah.
Well, you would have been here recently for our recent election. Is that
Oh
right?
yes, I was there for the election. I was out there on the polling booths and getting around.
Yeah. And how did it go for the Heart Party? How did you guys go this time around?
Well, in the Senate, I got 93,000 votes,
Wow.
which is, it's nice to know that 93,000 people decided to give us number one. But
Yeah.
that's in New South Wales, not all Australia. That's New South Wales. But
Awesome.
it's not enough to get a Senate seat.
Yeah.
Right.
I was very glad to see Malcolm Roberts get back in. I was hoping that, and I was also hoping that maybe Jared Rennick would get in. And we worked to try and help that happen by having the Australia First Alliance with Jared Rennick and also the Libertarian Party, just to try and give people, we did want to have a more, instead of having this like, oh, it's me and I'm the only way, like let's go out there and try and let's have some unity. We actually are closely aligned on so many different issues here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jared Rennick's been super outspoken. I do social media management for the AVN, who you and Barbara are very well connected with. And we've shared so much of Jared Rennick's stuff, and just I love seeing him push back in, within that parliamentary setting, and just he just doesn't. He's like a dog with a bone. He's just not going to stop.
He's very good.
Yeah,
I've become friends with Jared, and I can tell you that he's a man of integrity, and he's the real deal. He's not. I think he's one of the nicest politicians. Well, look, Malcolm Roberts is a great guy. John Ruddock's a great guy. There are many nice, but Jared is very, very. He's a good man. He's a good man.
Yeah.
I can tell a good person. I think he's a great guy, and I would love to see him get back in. I don't know what he's. It's a very hard comeback. These main parties have got it stitched up.
Yeah.
It's very hard for the voice of the people to be truly represented. And most of the people actually don't even know they're being misrepresented, and they continue to vote for people that misrepresent them and don't have their interest at heart. It's a sort of bizarre situation.
Yeah. It's so different from the States. But I'm wondering, how much does the politics in the States affect or fall off here? Like, obviously, so we just said a bunch of members of the CDC be let go. There's some big tables being overturned there. And it's getting talked about a lot here. Does any of that rub off on the politicians here? Does it start to kind of set the tone that these big organizations are not, forever? They're not permanently there.
Well, the interesting thing is that in Australia, particularly in Australia, we don't actually generally have very strong politicians. I actually think they're quite weak. So if you look back, just to go back to Nazism or even to Stalinism, the government controlled the narrative and the propaganda armor of the media, and the media controls the people. But what we have today, the media has actually overshadowed the government, and the politicians are terrified. I mean, literally terrified of bad press. And so they will do anything to appease the whatever the current media narrative is. So now we have the media in control of the politicians. So our real enemy in Australia, yes, while weak politicians are a problem, we have a real big media problem. And now, because I've been out of Australia, I've been trying to catch, and most of the what's the feeling in Australia, and what I can pick up from Australia and from talking to people back there, there's very little, there's almost no mainstream narrative of this amazing decision by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's like,
Yeah.
or if it's couched in like anti-vaxxer Robert F. Kennedy, sacks,
Right.
the committee, like, really? Have these people stupid? Here is a man that he comes from American royalty. His father was assassinated for standing for the truth. His uncle was assassinated. This is a man that doesn't have to work another day in his life. They are very wealthy. They live in a beautiful part of America. And yet he's out there putting his head on the chopper every day and taking all this abuse, which he's been taking for probably at least 10 years over his position on the vaccine. And we say that he's, you're just an anti-vaxxer. How dare they wipe that off? How do we come to have so little regard for honest integrity in our society? This is a man of great integrity. I admire him. In fact, I had a 1 hour Zoom with him before COVID. I wasn't there. There were 6 of us on the call, and just having a chat. He was on there. It was a wonderful conversation, and yeah, he's a man that believes in health. He believes in freedom. He understands freedom. He understands corruption more than any of us would know. As he said at that time, he said, "I know these guys, these corrupt. I went to school with many. I went to I know these people." He said, "They're not good people."
Yeah.
And again, they have what I say is the most worthless motivation in life: money, to die rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the same in Australia? Do you notice? We know it's commonly known in the States, like Nancy Pelosi, her husband would appear to be the most brilliant stock market investor in the world because every stock that he buys goes through the roof, almost like he has inside knowledge. Is that a thing in Australia too, where they go in, their salaries like, 80, 90K, whatever, and then they come out millionaires? Is that common here?
There's so many conflicts of interest. Isn't Scott Morrison, something came out about him recently that he was, he'd invested into, I can't remember if it was to do with the vaccines, but he was invested in something that made lots of money throughout when he was in governance. And you hear stories like that all the time.
Like, I think you'd have to be incredibly naive to believe that these people that go in on a salary of around 200,000 a year end up as multi-millionaires. And from the time that they went into politics, it's 1 + 1 = 2. You don't have to extrapolate it out too far. How did you make your money? What, was it inside information, decisions you made? It does happen. It just happens.
Yeah.
But I feel the greatest corruption we see in our politicians is their abject weakness to represent the will of the people and to understand the tenets of freedom that made our country great, made it a beacon of hope. Now, I was just up in Europe, and a guy told me he actually owns many medical clinics in Germany, and he said, my sole goal in our medical clinics is to get people off medication. He said, we're 100% funded by the German government because they want that. I said, you'd probably be a criminal in Australia. He says, brother, I know it. He said, we were thinking of opening in Australia. We sent a team down there. They came back and they said, not Australia. You'll end up, they'll probably, it's a horrible place. But why I started with him is because he told me, he said, we always thought, he said, I'm originally from, Serbia, and we've had a terrible war there, but we always used to think when things go pear-shaped in Europe, there's always Australia. We can always go to Australia. He said, after COVID, we all thought, hell, we don't want to go to Australia. What happened down there? What happened to the country, the kangaroo and gee, everything's okay in Australia, crocodiles, Steve Irwin wrestles the crocodile down. Like, now we're just this country of, someone's sick over there. No, we don't think, someone's sick over there. Let's go to their home, take them food and look after them. No, we're like, no, we put on a mask. They can't come out of their home. We have to punish them. How dare they be sick? They could hurt me. We've gone from this inverted society where we were once a people that go and help the sick neighbour to one now we're scared of them and ostracise them and even be angry at them for how dare they be sick. And maybe they didn't have the vaccine. Maybe they didn't wear their mask properly. Their own fault.
Yeah.
We've lost some of the basic compassion that's a bedrock of our society and the United States and England. This is not of our basically our Protestant heritage, which basically brought this about. It was caring for our fellow man, caring for each other. Your problem is my problem, and we have an Anzac spirit. Like, once upon a time, what we used to do, we would give our life for freedom. We would forego our safety for freedom. Now what we do, we forego our freedom for safety. It's upside down. And once we forego freedom for safety, then we are open to any narrative, long as it comes under the banner of it's for your safety. Oh, yes, okay, yes, well, take their freedom away, take their assets away, take their money away, take their job away, because it's all about safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we turn it around? Where do we see it going to flip it back the other way?
I feel that Australia is a long way. I do despair of our situation in Australia. I'm very encouraged by the situation in America, because I do see there is a flip. But, you can see two very polarised positions in society. And it all depends where the narrative is coming from, because when I was over there, we also have a warehouse and business in Texas. And when I'm over there, like, everybody is like, yay. Well, no, it's like you don't hear any negative. And I'm just curious. I'm just mixing with people in business. It doesn't matter. They're all like pro the new direction America's taking, stamping out corruption and waste and lowering taxes and, closing the borders. They're all happy with that. So, but, if you look to Australian media, you would think that there's a huge proportion of people in America very unhappy, because that's the one-sided view you're getting. So there is change happening. I mean, I couldn't have been more delighted. I thought I can't say anything about it at the moment. When I read about the 17 of the advisory committee being sacked by RFK, I thought, is this true? Is this a scam? This news is so good.
I know you have to rub your eyes a little bit. And then...
But here at my place, I have an elevator because our place is up on the 30th floor, and they have screens in every elevator, and it's constantly all the news. And I just went downstairs, and it flashed up on the screen, Robert F. Kennedy sacks 17 members. I thought, it's on the news, mainstream news here in Dubai.
Yeah. And of course, I think all the Q narrative. Were you following the Q stuff at all? The Q, it was like QAnon, the kind of conspiracy circle of.
I think it started in Trump's first presidency, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That was very big. Yes, they thought it was all. Yes.
And of course, 17 is the letter Q in the alphabet. So.
Oh, that's 17.
They're sending signals.
Oh, it's so funny.
Well,
but I think, you hit the nail on the head, though, with what you said. And it's interesting that you brought up Serbia, because that's Dad's side is actually Serbian. And we've just got sent something the other day just talking about how, the Serbian nation hasn't signed to the EU. There's a lot of things that they do very differently there. And it's interesting because, that's Australia was always seen as this place of opportunity, this place that you could go and start over and have a great life. And it's just really interesting that you're sharing that perspective, because I think a lot of people, the perspective of Australia has shifted in these last few years, because what did we get known for? The harshest lockdowns, people getting shot at with rubber bullets. We just had Nick Patterson on recently, who is still going through the courts with everything that he experienced from the police brutality and getting wrongly arrested, wrongly accused and arrested and all this stuff. And it's really quite sad that that's how we're looked at now. But in saying that, I think that it's actually very necessary that this had to happen, because this whole "she'll be right, mate," this complacency that our society, Australian society, has become, that's just how we operate. I think that's what we need to actually shift out of that. And I think we've definitely seen that in the last few years. Like you said, homeschooling has skyrocketed. The amount of people that are, just paying more attention to the foods that they're eating and the water that they're drinking and, turning off the news and doing all these things. And I think those numbers are definitely growing. But in terms of, sort of the mainstream and what's the narratives that are being put out, unfortunately, there are just still these people that are glued to their TVs and glued to their phones and just believe everything that they're fed.
Sure. I do. And I know some, and it's almost pitiful, because they've lost the ability to think, and they're allowed to think. Well, in our government in Australia, we actually frown upon free thinking. Before I left Australia, I was watching, there was the holiday time, and the police chief or whatever, he got on the news and he said, we're urging people to slow down over the Easter break, blah, blah, blah. And, we're double demerit points. And he said, we're just appealing for people to have common sense. And I thought, what? Common sense is against the law. What a contradiction. Because common sense will dictate that, like, you might be driving there and the highway's completely empty and there's not another car on the road. Like, crank it up a bit, let's go a bit low. You'll have a camera there and they'll punish you for using that bit of common sense. I don't know how far we will go in Australia with the absurdities that exist. People don't want to think. There seems to be a rule for everything. For instance, I'll tell you something that happened in New South Wales a while ago, and I remember it was I think it was Barry Unsworth was the premier, and he decided that we're going to cut down on red tape. So they'd formed a whole cut down on red tape committee, like typical. And one of the things they came up with, and it was about the only thing I could think, they decided to eliminate rego labels on cars. So you don't have to have a rego label. They're not going to make them anymore. It's unnecessary. But if you do have an old one and leave it on the car, you're going to get fined. And I thought,
oh my goodness.
So it's not about, we're not going to have them anymore. It's like, if you leave the old one on, you're going to be fined. And this is how it is. So all we do now is we don't think. We think, oh, can I do that? Oh, what's the fine for that? So we're jumping to this tune that they dictate, and I personally don't jump to it. I didn't jump to it in COVID. I still don't. I don't in my business. I just think it's so absurd that I'm going to allow people that don't understand my business, my life, that are barely out of university, in many cases, they're going to make the decisions about my life. Richard Nixon said, famously, he said, it's small people in big jobs. He said, that's what the problem of our country is today, small people in big jobs. And Australia is rife with a public service, and those that are either in the public service or funded by the government, around 25% of the workforce. There's not a lot of room to move there, there's rules for everything. Terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
it reminds me of the wall.
But me politically, if given that position, I'd be ferocious to try and somehow turn that back, because it's just wrong.
Yeah, it's 100% the wall from Animal Farm. Do you remember that story? It's a story of communism, but it's allegorically laid out as a farm, and the animals take over the farm.
Yes.
Assumedly kill the owners. And then the ones in charge put on the wall, they paint the rules. And then periodically in the middle of the night or something, they go and they change the rules. So the wall is continuously changing. And we saw that almost exactly during COVID. You got to wear a mask. Now masks are okay. Now you have to sit down in a restaurant and then you can take your mask off. And now you have to wear your mask on in the restaurant. The rules are constantly changing, so it keeps you off balance. The more confused you are, the easier it is for them. Do you just go overloaded? I don't know. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that's how they control people. But I'm just like, I'm like you, where I'm like, it's pretty silly to follow all those dumb rules. Like, I'll follow the ones that keep me and my family safe, but I'm not going to keep bending over backwards to like follow everything to the dot.
What it says, Isaac, it says that you are too stupid to make any plain, simple decisions in your life.
Yeah.
We, the big brother, we will make all those decisions. You are not in any position to make this. And it is a very, very bad situation when we get into that area. I have a beautiful place, 450 acres out in the country, and we can run on common sense out there. But when I drive into the city, into Australian cities, I think, oh dear, I forgot how bad it is here.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. Roads that I used to drive on at 60 and 80 kilometres are now down sometimes to 40. And I think,
wow,
we have this, our car, the safety factor in our cars is hugely grown from what I used to drive back then. Drum brakes that didn't stop properly. Now you have to stop on the thing. Yep. They've got us driving. We manufacture traffic jams in it, all over Australia. I see it. They just manufacture traffic jams.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty crazy situation. Something's got to give. This situation cannot be sustained. I often think, how will it change? What will be the catalyst? In America, it took a very strong personality like Donald Trump. Even though there are good people like RFK and J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy and even Elon Musk and all these people, they needed someone with a very, very strong, dynamic personality to drive it through that was almost impervious to attacks. Whatever that attacked, whether he was attacked for some what they say was a moral indiscretion or a taxation indiscretion or whatever, it just all bounced off him, and he was powerful, rich and strong enough just to barrel through it all.
Yeah.
I'm, I don't know where we're going to have that figure rise up from Australia.
Yeah.
That would,
well, at the very least, people are seeing it modeled. And hopefully there's still an element where it's monkey see, monkey do. There's enough people that once the bar is set, others will rise to that and realize, hey, we don't actually have to kneecap ourselves and slow ourselves down in order to just fit in. Why not make our country as good as it possibly can, build up that strong individualism, like, hey, you're responsible for your life. You're responsible for the lives of people around you. But more importantly, you're responsible to follow and not violate your own internal compass, and to honor who you are and not just abandon who you are just to blend in and not be criticized. In fact, the strong leader faces the most criticism, and that's a valuable thing, not a shame.
Yes, for sure. I think I've always encouraged people to offer personal resistance, and I realise that in our society, and I don't know why, because when I was young, truckies blockaded highways when things were unfair and the government listened, but we don't seem to do anything like that anymore. For instance, I ended up in court with my local council over, they considered my zone, I was doing something that was inconsistent with my zoning, and I went to court and I fought it and I lost. I lost that one and I thought, wow. So when it came time to enforcement of the court orders, the authorities came out there and they came onto my property and they said, we have a court order, we're going to inspect, we believe you're in violation of the court order. And I said, well, I'll tell you what you're going to do, fellas, you're going to get off my property. Okay, that's what you're going to do. And they said, oh, no. We have this paper. And I said, once again, what you're going to do is you're going to get off my property. That's what you're going to do. Just go. And this man refused to go. The chief compliance officer said, "No, we will not go." I said, "No, you'll go. You'll go. You're not go. You are not going into my buildings. You are not violating. You're going to go." And he was quoting the law, and he was saying, "Who do you think you are? You think you're above the law." So in the end, I actually had to grab him by his clothes and drag him to his car and send him on his way. But I realised, and from then on, it was never a problem. They just stopped coming and hassling me. And in my local community, a lot of the business people who heard about it, they were like, "You did that?" And I was saying, "But you do it too." If we all do it to these people, they are just very small people, and they exercise their power by default because you capitulate to them. They come to your property and they say, "We're coming in to do that." And you just tell them, "Get off my property." If we all do that, then we win. But there seems to be this unwillingness in Australia to stand up to authority. We have this, and the authority is not good. And I even have Christian friends say, "Oh, well, the Bible says, you've got to obey the authority." I said, we live in we are in a democratic society where they are not living the democratic principles. So I feel it's worthy to protest that and stand for the true value. It's not that they're going to kill you or anything. You're not forfeiting your life. Come on, what are we forfeiting?
Well, even Daniel said no, and they threw him in the lion's den. It's like, and granted, there was only one, him.
Absolutely.
But, be Daniel.
That's a very good thing. Dare to be a Daniel. We read this, and that brings me to another point: the appalling behaviour of the churches today that have all these stories, in the of Daniel in the lion's deaths, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who wouldn't bow down, even though it was law, and so many stories of passive resistance to authorities that cost people their life, and we just capitulate and we think, "Oh yes, but we must be peaceful, we must be nice, we must be compliant." And of course, I've met very strong resistance to this, and I say, "No, it's not that. It's not that. It's because you take the money. You capitulated a long time ago. You took the money for your hospitals, you took the money for your schools, you took them for your aged care, and your hands are tied." I said, and that's what they're terrified of. They've become not bastions of religious freedom and the truth and integrity. They've just become these money-making machines that deriving their income from government grants, and they're terrified of jeopardising it. So you've got in leadership positions not people that are great people of faith, but you've got people that are cowardly who are just worried about the bottom line and making sure that we make ends meet and the profits are good.
Yeah, and it's a good point to make about, the churches and certain religious dogma, because I think we spoke about this actually recently with Nick Patterson, and because he's a Christian and he is a proud biblical man, and he's one of the strongest men I know with all the, he wasn't going to back down when they, with everything that they did to him. And I think, and I think that's unfortunately where a lot of religious dogma has gone now, is that, oh, you've just got to be the nice person and just, just comply, be very compliant and just do the right thing. And you see that throughout a lot of society as well in some of the Christian culture where, people have just totally lost like the moral integrity of actually doing what's truly right and what's aligned with truth. You know what I mean? Because, look at perfect example was during COVID, the amount of churches that complied with all the masking and the locking down and closing and whatever. And it's like, if the way I see it is, if you have true faith in God, you know that you'll always be protected. You don't have to wear a mask and be scared of sick people. And, it's just so contradictory.
Honestly, if you're in a church and you hear, someone there, they've got COVID, like they'd be like, "Oh," no, it should be like, "Oh, really? Let's get down there. Let's go down there. Let's see. We'll clean their house. We'll cook them some meals and just make sure they're in comfort." That's how that's how Christian people behave. They didn't worry about masks. I've actually been asked to leave a church. It was surreal. I thought, really?
Wow.
Really? They said yes to you. Because I went in there and they were standing, you had to sign in. I just get out of the way. I'm not wearing my mask in. And then I went and sat right next to someone and they sort of were like squirming away from me. And then it came to they had a meal on it and there was some certain rules and I didn't obey, and they came and they said to me, you're just being rebellious. Why are you here? Why don't you just leave? And I said, really? You'd like me to leave? I will leave. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just thought,
yeah, it's wild.
one place we should find sanctuary. But I will tell you, I did go to a church in Mullumbimby during the height of it, and there was a South African pastor there, and he wouldn't have a bar of any of the stuff going on. And
All right.
Oh, this is my home. I like this.
Yeah. That's good. There weren't very many of them like that in the States. Very, very few. And my hat goes off to anyone that didn't bend the knee to the worldwide
That's right.
COVID religion.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah.
So what's your vision for the future, Michael? Like, what do you want for Australia, for our future?
Yeah. I would like to see Australia basically embrace the principles of freedom. I just feel that we need to then somehow there's an acknowledgement and a wind back of this excessive overreach of government into our everyday life, right down to our absurd traffic rules, to the regulation of our houses. We have a housing shortage in Australia, not because of all the migrants coming here. Like here in Dubai, you have no idea the level of migration here. But do they have a housing shortage? No, because they don't have the incredibly restrictive housing rules in Australia. Like we've got this land of wide open spaces and all the land, yet, oh, no, you can't build here. And it's just it's unbelievable. We have a manufactured housing shortage. I was hoping I would never even be in politics so much if the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party, it's a contradiction, isn't it, Isaac?
Yeah. It's very different.
Party is the Conservative Party, but the Liberal Party of Australia, but it's imploding, and they still don't get it. They don't get why they're imploding because they don't have a conservative voice. I would like to see, and I've even thought of, that party with its implosion, are they wide open? Are they open for change? But they don't seem to be, to realise and admit that they've failed because they're not listening to the people. They're actually trying to be like the socialist left. They've become a proponent of socialism principles. During COVID, they were also, right out there pushing the non-freedom narrative. So I am hopeful. I'd love to see somehow a change coming. I don't care what direction it comes. I don't care if it comes from the Liberal Party, a powerful individual, or any of the minor parties. That doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I do hope that we can turn back this tide. It'll need someone very strong. I do believe that it'll need a leadership personality. I don't know who. I think there are people there on the landscape that could do it. You take Jared Rennick. I think he's a good man. He's got a lot of powerful. He'd be a good leader of the party, actually, of their party. But what do? They dumped him as his pre-selection because he's getting bad press. He's not speaking the narrative. I'm giving a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
So I always have hope.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure where it's coming from. I do try to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Encourage people just to live their truth, resist unfairness, resist all these things that they're trying to tell us that are important. You're a part of the AVN, resist. Think about what you're doing to your children. It's not morally right to stick a needle into their pure little veins and squirt a toxic substance from a company that is the greatest criminal organisation in the world by virtue of their fines. They make $3 trillion a year. They've been fined $123 billion in fines, makes them the most corrupt organisation in the world. The TGA that regulates all these things are platoon. They are financed 96% by that corrupt organisation. It's like going to the mafia and saying, you are the most corrupt organisation in America, so we're going to watch you people. So we're going to get an organisation and the mafia funds it for 96%.
Yeah.
Like, if you put it
It's
in
insane.
that couch, you'd say it's absurd, but this is the situation we have in Australia. So I'd like to see this change. The rollback and the pushback of the medical tyranny. We've become a big bloated state now. The bigger growth industries in Australia are nothing constructive. They're GP super clinics, more hospitals, more NDI facilities. It's just a take society. We've lost the vision of we are growth, expansion, let's be innovators, because we have small people crushing innovation in Australia. And so innovators pack up and they think, I'm going up to Vietnam and we're going to set up our industry there, or in Thailand, or in this is where they're going.
Yeah, that's the double-edged sword.
Pretty pessimistic, doesn't it? But honestly, in amid all the pessimism, we have to have some optimism. And the optimism, I do believe that there is hope, but we need to have personal resistance. We need to wake up to ourselves, Australia. We need to, we have to stop thinking that we're getting the truth here. We have to question everything, legitimately question it and know what is the right and the truth. And I do. It doesn't matter what area I'm in. I've always questioned everything. So I questioned my Catholic upbringing. I questioned, then I became an atheist. I questioned that. I put that through a full analysis, and then I eventually rejected that as well, because I felt I have to follow the truth wherever it leads me. I question the vaccine narrative. I question everything. It's like, why saying that? Who's saying that? Why are they saying that? What's in it for them? Because there's, weigh it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinkers.
Yeah, and that's very good advice. I think that's what we've lost. And again, it's part of the way we're so indoctrinated through the schooling system is not to question anything and to just take what we're told from the authority figure and just go with that. And yeah, people like you are so needed because, we tend to do the pendulum swing as humans. We see something we don't like and we want to go to the complete opposite side. And I think a lot of people have done that with politics where they're like, well, the politics, it's all corrupt and whatever. So let's just forget all about it and not pay it any attention. And, people that want to tear the system down and whatever, it's like the system's kind of crumbling on its own. Like I kind of see it's going to get to a point where it's just going to kind of implode. But in the meantime, it's within these systems that we need to push back and we need to question and we need to start saying, no, we're not going to accept this. And like you said, the more we do that, the more it only takes one person and then one person, does it. And then and it has this ripple effect. And the more we do that, that's when these things do start to change because people stop going along, just going along to get along and start actually enacting their own will. And then that's what creates the change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I appreciate you being forthright with all that because it takes the first step really for the change is like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous. What is it that you got to start with admitting you have a problem?
Yeah.
That's the first step to stopping the problem.
Yeah.
And people are slowly starting to realize that. COVID definitely, I think, lit the fire under people's feet, woke a lot of people up. We'll see if it's enough. It
certainly did because it was the manifestation. It was like the covers were pulled off now. This is where they're really at. Before COVID, I used to say, do you think it's just about the children? You let this go and it's only a matter of time they'll come after you. And people asked me later on, they said, when a lot of these clips were played, and they said, how did you know? And I said, I know the beast. I know the beast.
Yeah.
This idea that they're somehow interested in your health is not true. It's market dominance at any cost. And they made a killing. They made a killing in COVID. And
absolutely.
some woke up. People, we saw we basically went through a war. I considered myself, I was at war in COVID, and that's why I went to every protest I could. I organised some. I resisted at every level. I resisted wherever I could, whether it was the supermarket, on a plane. I remember I was on a plane one day. I just wouldn't wear the mask, and they were all getting into a tiz about this, and other people are angry. And when we finally landed, there were 6 policemen waiting for me. Like,
No
what a terrible
way.
fellow I was. And I was taken off the plane.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I remember
Ridiculous.
very clearly.
Did they
I went
fine you
off and-
afterwards, or they just let you go?
Well, it was interesting. When I went there, I just smiled. I said, "Hi guys, how are you going today?" And there you are, yes, very seriously, "Sir, is there any reason that do you have a legitimate mask exemption?" I said, "Oh no, I don't." They said, "Do you have a legitimate reason why you don't have masks?" I said, "Yes, I do." I said, with all this talk about health and that, I said, I certainly wasn't going to do anything as unhealthy as restrict my free flow of oxygen into my body. So, yeah, and I'm being very careful about my health, so I'm definitely not going to wear a mask. And
Beautiful.
they just looked at me and I said, "I believe, guys, it's your move now. Where do we go?" And they said, "Oh, we need your ID." I said, "Yes, certainly. Here it is." I smiled. I had a little bit of light chatter, and they were sort of looking down on the side to a couple of the cops. They handed me back my license. They'd written it all down. And they were standing there in some sort of uncomfortable pose. And I said, "You gentlemen, I believe that we're done. So I'm just going to walk out now. I've got someone waiting outside the airport for me. So I bid you good day and thank you very much. Lovely to meet you." And I walked off. And that was it.
Beautiful. I think a lot of people have got a lot to learn from you, Michael, because you make it sound so simple.
Well, I remember one day a policeman pulled me up in the street. We were doing a protest at the time during COVID, at the council chambers, and the police came up to me. The guy in charge, he says everyone had masks, even the protesters. They said everyone put their masks on, so people put on. I didn't. I said, and he came up to me and says, "Excuse me, sir, could you put your mask on?" I said, "Okay." And then I didn't do anything. And he came back and he said, "Sir, can I ask you to put a mask on, please?" And I said, "Yep, sure, certainly. Okay, no worries." Anyway, I did nothing. And he came up the third time. He said, "Sir, I'm asking you to put a mask on." And I said, "Yeah, no worries." And I just smiled at him. And then he said, "I'm just going to walk down here and then I'm coming back. If you don't have a mask on, I'm going to have to arrest you." And I said, "Yeah, okay, no worries." And he walked off and he never come back. I didn't move. I just stayed there. I thought, "Oh, well, let's see what happens here." But because
I love it.
What do we fear? What do we fear? I have been rough handled. Yeah, probably only once was I rough handled and thrown to the ground. But even that, I think, that's what children do. They rough handle, throw to the ground. We call it play. That wasn't a big deal.
I love it. I love your attitude.
Stood your ground. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's such, I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and all I'll say to them is take a note or two. Take a leaf out of Michael's book.
Yeah.
And my dear little wife, Barbara, I'll finish with a story with her. At the time, she had to go to America. And, of course, non-American citizens could not go to America unless you were vaccinated. And we had someone, a doctor said, "Oh, we'll give Barbara a medical as a certificate." And I told Barbara, "It'll show that you've been vaccinated." She said to me, "Oh, no, I'm not going to take that. That's a lie. I don't want that." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just buy you a ticket and you can go. And we'll just leave it in God's hands." She said, "Yes, I'd be much happier doing it that way." So we bought the ticket. We went to the airport. It was very serious. They checking everyone's vaccination certificate. We had none. I was standing there with her. I thought, "Oh, let's see how this goes." And we talked about it. I said, "What's the worst thing they'll do? Are they going to shoot me?" No. They'll probably won't let you on the plane. Oh, what a terrible thing! It's not that big, Or if you get to America, they might turn you back. It's not like the end of the world, She felt she had a job to do, had a calling to do, to go to America and speak to these people who were expecting her. We got up there. They never asked her. Not a thing. They asked people in front of her, behind her. I was a witness to this. But with her, they just gave her the boarding pass. She went into the airport. Further, they had another check, because for particularly people going to America, a special check for your vaccine certificate. Once again, they never asked her. Everyone around her never asked her. When she got to Dallas, they made an announcement, could you line up and present your vaccine documentation for those non-American citizens? She just lined up. They never asked her. Everyone in front of her, behind her, all around her. So
that's amazing.
That's absolutely miraculous. Love that.
We just felt that it was like God just had his hand on Barbara. We've seen many incidents.
100%.
And I really value my little wife. She's a timid little soul. She's 71 years old. I mean, but she just goes. She says, oh, whatever. She'll often say, whatever you think, husband, if you think it. I say, yeah, let's just go. And I trust in God. He wants me there. And if I don't, if it doesn't work out, that's fine too, no problem.
Beautiful. Bless her heart. It's I was just going to say, such a great place to operate from, because my grandma was a bit like that. During COVID, she didn't get the vaccine, and she's got health issues, so she's quite often at the doctor, and they kept asking her every time she went. She goes, no, thank you. And that was her stance. She's very religious, and that's her whole stance was. If she's a little old Serbian woman, if God want to take me, he take me when he's ready. I don't need vaccina.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I don't know what we think. Do we think we're immortal? Goodness me, people have been dying. You see that narrative on the television an 83 or a 92-year-old died. I've been thinking, yep. And let me see how that's different to any other time. Like, people die when they get old. I mean,
exactly.
It's just, and what do you usually die from? Flu, pneumonia. That's usually the takeout for people that are old. It's that was not unnormal. But what was very unnormal was a friend of ours whose 16-year-old grandson, died 2 days after having the vaccine. That's not usual.
Wow.
So we're, a 93-year-old died. Oh, there's a 16-year-old died over here from the vaccine. Oh, I'm not going to report that. That's conspiracy theory.
Absurd.
Like, really? I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. It's common sense. But like you said, common sense ain't so common.
It was right there in people's faces, and they just looked the other way.
It's against the law. There's rules against it.
That's right. We'll throw those rules out. We'll conditionally accept whatever they hand to us. But
well, thank you so much for your time, Michael. It was great chatting to you. And where can people sort of stay connected with you and support the Heart Party and things that you're involved in?
Well, you can at theheartparty.com.au. So heartparty.com.au. That takes straight to our website, and we've got a lot of information there. We've got some great people behind the scenes. We're very passionate. You'd love all our people in our party. We're a very peaceful party too. We don't have internal fights, and because we're very focused on where we're going, on our goal. We don't get caught up, in petty power struggles. We're actually 70% women as our membership.
Oh, wow.
So we do have a strong female base, but we've got some very good, strong men in there as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. Right. Awesome. Well, we'll link everything in the show notes, and we'll definitely be rooting for you again at the next election.
Thank you very much, and all the best. Thanks for inviting me on, Isaac and Alexa.
Yeah.
And God bless you both. And I hope this little interview is useful.
Oh, more than that. It was amazing, and it was an honor. It was a pleasure meeting you, and big fan of the example that you're setting for young men, both here and around the world. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the Natural AF podcast, where we explore holistic healing modalities, mindsets, and methods that reconnect us to nature and our natural state of being.
If something resonated, share this episode and see the show notes for our guest links, as well as all of our discount codes for our aligned affiliates and Natural Art Form, where we handcraft a range of organic, natural remedies to help support your body's natural healing abilities and help support the show.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a few seconds to leave us a rating and review. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, hit the like button and drop us a comment, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates.
We're not here to conform, we're here to remember what's real. So step into your power, be curious, and be natural AF.